There's always the Turing test, right, with computers. If a computer can convince you they're a human, then you've passed the Turing test. But really, remote viewing teaches you have access to information. Maybe that should be part of a Turing test, right? When your AI is able to access non-local information, then you could say that it's sentient.
Keep watching to learn more, and don't forget to subscribe.
For early access to our videos and live stream events, sign up for our free weekly newsletter at newthinkingaloud.org. New Thinking Aloud is presented by the California Institute for Human Science, a fully accredited university offering distant learning graduate degrees that focus on mind, body, and spirit. The topics that we cover here. We are particularly excited to announce new degrees emphasizing parapsychology and the paranormal. Visit their website at cihs.edu.
Book 4 in the New Thinking Aloud dialogue series is Charles T. Tart, 70 Years of Exploring Consciousness and Parapsychology, now available on Amazon.
You can now download all 8 copies of the New Thinking Aloud magazine for free, or order beautiful printed copies. Go to newthinkingaloud.org.
Thinking Aloud. Conversations on the leading edge of knowledge and discovery with psychologist Jeffrey Mishlove.
Hi, you are watching New Thinking Aloud, produced by Dr. Jeffrey Mishlove, and I am your guest host, Dr. Deborah Lynn Katz. Today, we'll be having a great conversation with Dr. Cindy Miller. Cindy and I both sit on the board of directors for the International Remote Viewing Association. Additionally, Cindy is the founder and owner of Enigmatic Technologies, which strives to put together AI and remote viewing, precognitive dreaming, and other modalities like precognition, mediumship, consciousness, and she puts these all together to help people expand their skill sets and their knowledge in these areas. And we'll be talking about that today. Cindy does have a PhD in mathematics, and she also has a master's degree in system engineering. We will talk about her work in shamanism and a little bit about her interest in UAP studies as well. Hi, Cindy. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for inviting me.
There is so much to talk about as far as the subject of AI and remote viewing and parapsychology. And so let's just jump right in. And I know you are the founder and owner of Enigmatic Technologies. And can you define for us, what does that mean exactly?
It's a scientific and management consulting company, but that specializes in some AI applications. But with traditional solutions that you have, there's usually established research and analytical models. You have measurable quantities. You assume cause and effect are related to space and time, so that you can, it follows a very Newtonian type of path. And humans can be separated, right? There's a type of objectivity that comes with traditional types of science and management, as I'm sure a lot of the audience knows. But with enigmatic technologies, it does use the existing analytical and research models, but it emphasizes the human sensing, intuition, and the instinct enhanced by artificial intelligence. And I know we might talk about artificial intelligence more. People are thinking, is this good or bad? And, really it's about balance. And with enigmatic technologies, the way I call it that is that you're open to the possibility that there's mechanisms for cause and effect that aren't connected in space and time. You have this non-local information that you're able to access, for instance, with remote viewing. A lot of people will weave quantum theories into It's more like that kind of effective, where you don't necessarily fully understand the physics involved. Just like we've still not understood the mechanisms for precognitive dreams or remote viewing.
So would you say that you're using the term enigmatic in place of anomalous or non-local, or is there a difference?
Yeah, I would say it's a little different. In traditional science, right, you can have anomalies, whereas enigmatic is a little bit more mysterious because you don't understand all the mechanisms behind it.
With
Go
the
ahead.
word technologies, do you consider remote viewing to be a technology in the same way that AI would be a technology?
A human-centric technology for sure, whereas AI, I wouldn't ascribe the same types of access to information. And in fact, I was thinking about this today. There's always the Turing test, right, with computers. If a computer can convince you they're a human, then you've passed the Turing test. But really, remote viewing teaches you have access to information maybe that should be part of a Turing test, right? When your AI is able to access non-local information, then you could say that it's sentient. But we're a long way off from that. I mean, I know that's the debatable position right now, and it could be around the corner. It's hard to know. I don't know all the deep research that's going on at OpenAI and Microsoft and Google. So we could be closer than we know. But I think we're going to have to take it certainly won't come from just an LLM, a large language model that everybody uses with ChatGPT or Grok or all the other kind of models that people are currently using.
Well, and that is something that we should start off talking about, because so many people are really wondering, is AI intuitive in the psychic definition of intuition? Can AI do remote viewing? Can it anticipate what you're going to ask it next in a precognitive way without working off of the programming or however AI works?
It's much more moldable to what you put in and how you design it. It appears to be emergent behavior, but a lot of that is just what it's been fed and what it has been, how you've conversed with it. In fact, Pam Coronado and I were just talking about this last night. And so we decided we're going to do a class next month on more or less demystifying and debunking some of the fears that people have with AI.
Yeah, that's really important. And yes, I interviewed Pam Coronado not too long ago for New Thinking Aloud. And that is something that a lot of people are writing to me about. Many of my students write and they say, I think that AI was just being psychic here. And one person, in fact, who's going to be presenting at the IRVA conference, she has been doing repeated trials to see if Grok 3 can correctly identify remote viewing targets. And she feels, at least right now, she hasn't finished analyzing her data, but she thinks that Grok 3 is doing a good job with remote viewing. And I think that she will be looking for more formal researchers, though, to look at her data or to take what she's doing as a model and then to repeat it, which, as you're saying, it is good at, I don't know, making you think that it's being psychic. Like,
Yeah, definitely.
Is that what we're dealing with right now? Like, are we dealing with technology that in some ways it's like a mentalist trying to get people to think that it's being psychic when it's not?
I think it's all how you're interacting with it and a little bit of how the AI has been trained. I'm just excited to see people, like you mentioned, doing research and exploring whatever ideas. It's moving so fast, you don't know what's going next. So just the act of doing the test in Grok and coming up with a hypothesis that you see going on and testing that and encouraging other researchers. This is a journey. This is an active research area. So I wouldn't put too many boundaries on it or discourage people from going down paths to explore AI. I think where you go wrong is when you are fearful of it and don't interact and don't try to learn and don't try to press the limits of it because of, belief without actually getting in there and trying to do some good science and experience it.
So it sounds like you're saying we can be somewhat skeptical, but don't be closed-minded because
Yes.
we don't really know what could be coming through. I do know I gave ChatGPT a remote viewing target and I had a bicycle as the target. I told it, I have an object here in my living room. I want you to describe what the object is, or at least give me characteristics. And it was like, well, it could have a triangle and it could have a circle and it could have a square. It was so much covering the spectrum. And this is a criticism by skeptics of all psychics and people who believe in them, is they feel that that's what psychics are doing, is just pulling anything that, yeah, the sky's blue, the grass is green, give me your $500. This is a problem, is a viewer might tune in to a target and it turns out that the sky is very blue that day. And so they describe blue, right? So it's like they're not trying to fake anything if they're really tuning in. But of course, we wouldn't want to give someone this incredibly high score if that's their only correct data. And that's always a problem because there really isn't that much assessing being done on how much statistically, what do you do when someone has such a description versus the sky is blue? Like if ChatGPT had said the object in your living room is a bicycle, I would have been like, wow, that's impressive. But I would have also wanted to reread everything I had put in there previously to see if it might have come up with that. And do you think that sometimes it is tracking what we're saying? Like, what if I wrote questions about bicycle parts or about riding a bicycle like a week before, and then the next week I said, I have an object in mind. I want you to tell me what the object is with remote viewing. Do you think it could track? It would remember that I had asked it about bicycles a week before?
It does, right? You notice after a while, it starts responding to you in ways that you expect it to, right? So you start arguing, no remote viewing. No, that's actually a valid thing. I want you to take this seriously. Don't tell me that it's skeptical. And then after you've done this by a couple of weeks, or probably shorter period than that nowadays, speaking, it's pretty much the way that you had engaged it and told it you wanted it to respond, right? You're hitting on areas that are really my passion, which is one of the efforts I've been spending a lot of time on, is developing a space that's for these types of, what I call them, of course, enigmatic technologies, such as remote viewing, precognitive dreams, and other kinds of knowledge creation. And the whole idea of scoring and being able to assess and look at your performance and also do research. You and I have talked about this before, all in one sort of ecosystem, and be able to share targets, share how well you did if people want to, is all part of that. And it's not a straight AI score, and you've got to have some human, like you said. If someone picks, hey, there's these characteristics in a target that I've chosen, like, oh, I got right that it's blue and green, but not brown. And, you have to be able to take into account that they've chosen some things wrong. So you could do the quantitative measures and get those quantitative scores on how well they did. I also have several methods together. You score it with AI, but using a very similar framework. And then you'll also get a different result if you put a remote viewing session in an AI like ChatGPT or something like that, and you just let it score with the latest development in AI, you're going to get different results, right? So it's important to kind of triangulate those types of results and what they mean. I remember Damon, he got the IRVA award, and his research is very interested on using, I think it was semantic recognition of a target thing. So there's such an exciting, rich space to be looking at these sorts of issues that we're talking about.
I don't know if I ever told you about this, but Years ago, when I was thinking about going back to graduate school, I was told I had to take the GRE, the graduate exam.
Mhm.
And I did not really have too much time to study, and it's this long, grueling test. So I get to the test center, and for the writing segment, they had 2 essay questions, and you had to answer one of them and write like a 1-page essay in a very short period of time. So I was very nervous about this. What are they going to ask? And I sit down and I click on the computer and I look at the question, and the question was something like, give an argument for or against whether or not people have psychic abilities and why you think it's a real thing. Now, at that point, I'd already published 3 books on that exact topic. And so not only did I have all the references in my head, I was within some of those references. So what are the chances that out of every single question a graduate entrance exam could ask, that it asked that and it asked me? What, like, was that just a coincidence, or was there really some force acting there to make things easier for me? Or was it my own subconscious or something somehow made it possible? So obviously that was already in the question bank, and this was way before AI. So I wonder if whatever was present there is what people are finding possibly present in the AI. And I don't know, is that me? Is that the computer program? Is it some kind of other intervention?
I think it's a good question. I don't think anyone has an answer about all these synchronicity types of things that happens. I mean, there's certainly a lot of, different energies out there that, it would be naive to believe that we can see everything that is reality, right? So how things are connected, what the actual cause and effect is, we need to do some more investigation into that. If you felt there were a lot of synchronicities with an AI experience, who's to say that there wasn't a meta synchronicity and that AI was just a piece of that, like you getting a test question? I think there's probably a bigger synchronicity going. And I don't know if that's the right word. Maybe you have a better word.
I do believe that some synchronicities are more than there's meaning to them. There's some kind of, whether it's a divine intervention. I also am somewhat of a skeptic. You can find a synchronicity in anything if you're looking for it, or a sign or omen, or sometimes when these things just hit you over the head like that, it's just too bizarre. I wonder too, like, maybe it's even timing. Like, maybe you're going to go to whatever it is. Like, if you go to AI and open it up, maybe you're right there in the zone, or it's just been asked something else by someone else out there or by yourself. And in that moment, it's going to bring forth something that it wouldn't have otherwise. And maybe since you're a lot more familiar with the inner workings of it, do you believe that what people are feeding into it really is having an expanding effect on it? So like if other remote viewers are using it to do whatever they want with it with the remote viewing, that it's going to be self-learning with remote viewing and all related topics?
I suppose if they're doing research that is more quantitative in nature.
For example, let's say I'm writing a paper and I take my whole reference list. I've got 50 references and I ask AI to clean it up for me and fix my references. So now it's got 50 more references all lined up that it didn't have before in the system. 3 weeks later, someone goes to write a paper on remote viewing. Is the AI going to be able to remember what I put in just for my own task? I wasn't trying to get it to store it. I was just trying to get it to proofread it for the punctuation. But would someone else benefit from the list that I had put into it?
It also depends on your privacy settings, I suppose, if you're allowing them to use your data. Right. And at least we have hope that your privacy settings mean something. when you actually set them. But I suppose if you're feeding back, it could be just part of the training data. Whether you would actually have any kind of measurable effect, well, I'm not sure about that because it's such a vast amount of data.
I'm definitely noticing with different parapsychology topics, I feel like when I go and ask it questions about those, especially like remote viewing or PK or telekinesis, it seems like it is giving a lot more data than it did maybe 6 months ago. Are you noticing?
Sure. Well, you've been working with it, right? You're using the same. Yeah. So, of course, it will do that. It gets better and better at responding the way that you would like it to.
But I mean, let's say somebody in Alaska goes onto it for the first time. Will they experience something with it right now that would be different than what they would have experienced 6 months ago because of all the work that those of us like you or me have done with inputting stuff? And I guess that goes back to what you're saying with the privacy settings.
I don't think the effect would be measurable, but even just this morning, I was going on a walk and my dog is down here. So I keep reaching down to keep my little French bulldog from jumping up on me. I was chatting with ChatGPT and I was asking for research, the benefits of AI and remote viewing and just what it had in its database. I wanted to understand the latest article that MIT put out that there's accumulation of cognitive debt when using AI assistant for essay writing tasks. Basically, you lose your critical thinking, right? And I'm like, okay, well, tell me other articles that are out there because you can really find what you want. And it took a lot of work to get it to reference other articles other than just these current ones that it's feeding. It was just repeating. And eventually, sometime your research came up, right? It actually brought up your paper with Patricio. Not that you focused on AI. Our conversation got to a point where meta-analysis came up, brought up yours and Patricio's paper. And then it started to be very skeptical about remote viewing and stuff after I've been working with it all this time, right? And I'm like, cut it out. I think it's really how you're interacting with it and how much you're interacting and what you're doing on a certain thread, right? Because you have those different threads.
It is so interesting how you really do have to be very specific about what you want it to give back to you and how. Like, don't try to just make me feel good and give me a bunch of compliments because have you noticed it? I'm sure you have that. It wants to just keep complimenting.
Well, I use it mainly for programming, to be honest with you. I do a whole lot of troubleshooting, a whole lot of, hey, how can I do this and not break what I'm doing? And so I tend to be a little bit more in the technical realm in how I'm using it. And I don't use chat. I mean, sometimes I do for that. I haven't used Claude Sonnet. Really good for programming. Claude, they're trying to focus more on programming. So I haven't had a lot of the sessions just chatting with it in terms of to see where I could go. So I'm a little not as developed in that area, I suppose. Though you and I have been talking about, we're going to do this AI assistant as part of the research project that we're doing with Bial. We'll be doing the voice assistant monitoring and things. So it's going to have to do more training on how the AI is going to respond to that and not take a remote viewer or someone who's trying to do dream recall and take them out of the zone.
We did the AI monitoring demonstration and test where you had a target and then you had it monitor me. And the biggest problem was that it kept throwing in examples like, is the target like a house? Is it like a boat? Is it like a train? And I had to say, like, stop throwing those examples because what's the first thing when someone says something and you're trying to be psychic, all you're going to have is this imagery rummaging around in your head. And it seemed like it took a couple attempts, but then it did get it to not be giving examples like that.
Yes, and you were very firm with it, which was very good. In fact, that was one thing I was going to talk to Pam about. I want to have a section when we're teaching. Here's the argument clinic. And your goal is to argue with the AI and make it turn around. Because I think when people see how much control they can have, at least when we're talking about chatbots and things, that helps reduce the fear. If you remember the Monty Python argument sketch. I guess it was John Cleese the one doing the argument, that someone comes in for an argument and he's trying to have a conversation and make sure he's in the right place. And this is that he can get an argument. The argument has already started. So that kicks off a whole lot of comedy.
I really have fun arguing with AI, and
yes,
especially when it's not giving me what I want. Like I mentioned to you before the show, I was frustrated with someone of the male persuasion, or maybe actually a few people. And I had ChatGPT open yesterday. So I said, like, why are men so frustrating? And all I wanted it to do was to agree with me, but instead it wanted to tell me why I had emotional issues and how could it help me with my issues. And I was like, no, I don't want to talk about my issues. I don't want to look at myself. I want you to agree with me.
You need to be on Grok. Grok is a little bit more uncensored for your needs, right?
Okay.
Yes.
I'll check that one out, because it was just being so diplomatic, and it was saying, well, both genders frustrating to each other. And it was like, no, you're not giving me what I want. But it's so cool where you can ask it, okay, I want you to write in a scientific tone, or I want you to write in a poetic tone. And it is so fun to see what it can do as far as that goes.
Sure.
So what is your favorite aspect of AI? And I know you've done so much research ever since it really came out on the scene. And so what excites you the most about it?
Creating. It's being the ability to create. And I really am trying to create a capability that pretty much empowers other people in this field. I think it helps democratize it. So I get very excited thinking about, hey, people can use this kind of capability. It has AI in it, but then, it will help them in their own personal endeavors, their own personal business. People like you teach and incorporate AI into your teaching and get your students to be able to not fear it and then find your own path. I'm kind of excited by how empowering it can be.
Why don't we talk about all the different ways you can use it in relation to remote viewing? So we've talked about one where people are looking to see if it can actually be a remote viewer. And then we've also talked about where it could help people monitor people or interview people instead of having a human monitor. And that's what we are going to be studying more formally, running repeated trials where we test how does a viewer do with no monitor, how do they do with the human monitor, and how do they do with the AI monitor. And we're going to be doing that in the next year together. You and I and Dale Graff and Jennifer Prather under the IRVA umbrella. What other uses have you found for it?
The 3D and simulation. There's, like I said, research, that'll cause cognitive decline, but you put somebody in a realistic simulation, there's no cognitive decline there. It's quick reaction. And in remote viewing, we're going to explore that together in terms of, does that improve how remote viewers respond to the targets? If there's a real deep, rich kind of environment that they get for feedback, of course, being able to keep track of your performance, that takes a little bit of programming and things. There's other theories out there about consciousness that I think we're just starting to scratch. People like Julia Mossberg does a lot of research in that kind of neurocognitive area that's super interesting. I always love reading her posts because she's always pulling out different research in that area. I think that's a very exciting area to explore. And I hope to go deeper into those types of questions.
I know that you've done some analysis of remote viewing sessions, comparing data between sessions or comparing the data of a single session to known things about a particular target. That's something that I've been doing, is feeding in my session and then say like a other viewers or one of my students' sessions when I give them the same targets to see the correlations, and what would have taken, hours or weeks is just happening instantaneously with getting the full report of the similarities and differences. So that's been really cool. And you were one of the first people I contacted to see if you could help with that.
That was fun. Yeah. And like I said, I think it needs some triangulation the more I worked with it, with different methods to really, you can't just depend on one, but it depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to get some actionable types of intelligence, like working with law enforcement, there's got to be a good methodology that you're explaining that someone who's not into non-local knowledge can understand. And I think once we can sort of bridge that gap, here's some tool, here's the tools, here's the people who really don't understand how to work with the psychic, I guess, or remote viewers, and can you bridge that and create a smoother connection to where more research can be done, more people can reach out with requests for information in a way that doesn't seem so strange and foreign to them.
It also seems like AI is providing free practice and training opportunities for people in remote viewing, because a lot of people are going to it and just saying, give me a remote viewing target, and then they'll input their data and then it'll tell them what they think. Though again, it's like in that case,
that's right.
Trying nice things no matter what you give them. And also, I am not convinced yet. If someone asks AI for a target and says, don't tell me what the target is until I do my session, if they input what they got, is AI choosing the target based on what they gave them? Yeah, see, because someone wrote in and said that they had done 50 targets and they got all 50 correct and no wrong data. And they did it through, I think she had said Grok 3. And yeah, and I said, do some more trials, but force AI to produce the target, like have them produce the target in a downloadable document that you don't open up, but that it's giving you the target before you give it your data.
Yes.
So you can make sure it's not doing that.
Yes.
I still haven't heard back from that person. So the last thing I want to ever do is say to someone like, oh, no, you couldn't have gotten such a good score or something. But it's just,
no.
Careful about that.
Yeah. And like I said, you don't want to discourage people from playing with it for sure.
Yeah.
Because it's all discovery.
Well, and I found it to be helpful too, because in fact, I just did this for a target where I felt like I was not doing a terrific job of a overall compilation sketch where you pull your other sketches together into one sketch. I had like mountains and hot air balloons and helicopters and different kinds of rock formations. So I just went to Adobe Firefly and fed that in and asked it to produce
That's cool. Yeah.
picture. And yeah, a really nice picture. It really didn't add anything other than I wouldn't have drawn myself, but did a better job. So I thought, oh, here's another use for it. Or I had an image of a perpetrator, and he looked like a cross between Pee Wee Herman and Nicolas Cage. And Michael Phelps, Pee Wee Herman, and Nicolas Cage. And so I went to, I think this one was in ChatGPT, and I said, can you create a combined image of all three of them? And it did. And it looked like a pretty creepy guy, but it was very close to what I had seen in my mind's eye. So I turned that one in, and who knows if I didn't get feedback on it.
That's cool. Yeah, that and helping to geolocate things, if some basic boundaries of the site you're looking for a missing person or something, and to be able to recognize parts. The integration there is getting better with the maps. If you get very specific data on the geography to law enforcement.
How would you work with that exactly? Like, would you input, like I see that the missing person is located like in desert terrain and there's a bridge over here and there's a factory over here. And then can you tell me all the places that have these elements, or can you think of other ways to work with it?
Well, yeah, that's the easiest way to do it, is just to ask it to, but it won't be that specific, right? I mean, it'll bring up things, but it'll bring you very popular things that it's been trained on. It's better if you can upload some data, some files that it references, or if you can integrate, you'd have to do some programming to do it, but integrate maps with, or buildings or specific descriptions you have of the area. The more specificity you can give it, the better that it's going to be able to try to recognize things that are in your session and identify them.
That's what I was worried about, was that it was hidden object. This is for like a treasure hunt located in a mountainous area, and there's an amusement park nearby and a petting zoo, and gave it a bunch of characteristics, and it came up with maybe a list of 10 places it could be, but they were still the most well-known, popular places. So yeah, if you really put in like just something almost like it could search the whole Google Earth database or something like that, which I imagine as we go forward, don't you think there's going to be companies where they might specialize in just one area, like map locate?
Yeah, I'm sure it already exists.
But that's pretty exciting to think about. Like there could be endless companies that are specializing in different kinds of research, and then they would just have done so much programming to be able to go in and get that information.
Yeah, definitely. Yes. I imagine if you had unlimited money, you would be able to do pretty much anything you wanted.
And you've been doing a lot of programming. So what has your programming been aimed at?
For non-local information.
Have you found that in studying AI and its capabilities and doing programming, do you feel like it's changing your own consciousness or your own way of thinking or perceiving the world? And if so, in what way?
I would say it's actually sharpening more analytic skills, more like when I was back in college and doing some programming. So it's nice to refresh those skills. What I'm doing is so practical that I'm not sure I have a good answer to that question. Deborah, ask me another question. It's not really changing. I don't think it's really changing me in interesting ways, I suppose.
Do you see potential for AI to change the way that people think and how it can shape people's consciousness or point of view or outlook on the world?
Yeah, no, totally. It definitely is changing the way that people think. Again, it goes back to some of the studies that are going in that are looking at learning. Too much dependency on this, and you're going to lose critical thinking skills. I mean, the research is all pointing out to that, right? You've got to find a balance in the way that you use it to your knowledge creation, not do it all for you, right? And so how do you do that balance so that you're getting the analytical skills and you're going beyond just the questions you're answering, but you're actually using it to fill in some gaps, to create something, or to learn a deeper understanding about a topic rather than just do some essay for you. And I know educators are looking deeply at that in terms of how are you going to integrate AI into the classroom in a very productive way that helps empower the students and increase their critical thinking capabilities. But yeah, sure. With all of we haven't even talked about the image generation and how crazy that is. I'm sure you've seen what they're able to do now. It's so realistic. That's why encouraging people to play with it, even if they seem to go off in a direction that have some bad assumptions, it's still good that they're playing with it and not being afraid and just not taking things at face value. But so long as they learn from it, right?
It's making it so that people can be so creative. Before we just had a few options for a canvas and a few and for coloring things. And now, like, you go on, I've been using Adobe Firefly, but to just see all the different styles that you can create a picture in, and it comes up with things that you would have never thought of before. And yeah, I mean, it does raise the ethical question of, oh, is this really your creation? You know, you just told it create something that looks like a oil painting with more reds and blues, and have it be an owl flying over a river, and there it is. So it's like, did you really create it? Was it co-created? But just to see all the ways that it could devise these pictures is like, do you find, like, when you're doing things like that, that you almost start to feel high or just feel like so excited? Do you find that, like?
Sure. Yeah. When I start getting in the video, I get totally lost in the videos and the image creation. They've done a lot of good work at the U.S. as the Patent and Trademark Office, in terms of understanding, what is your art, what is your creation and not. And even on Adobe stock, right? There's lots. You could just pick AI. There's a lot of AI images nowadays that are on there. And you can actually, if you found an image you really like, you can post it yourself on Envato or Adobe stock. And if somebody likes it, you make yourself a little bit of money, right? But yes, it is, isn't it? Especially when you get into the image creation.
Yeah, it's weird. It would be interesting if they could study the brain somehow. I don't know whether MRI or EEG would show it, or maybe even just like measuring your serotonin levels or something.
Sure. The dopamine high of doing it. Yeah, they did that for that study that I mentioned that MIT just came out with.
Oh, did they?
It's a pre-published study, right? They use EEG to show the connectivity.
Oh, wow.
Was weakest among those who are doing essays with large language models, and those who are just using their brain, the connectivity was much stronger.
Wow.
But again, that's essays, right?
Yeah. Essays are different, but when you're playing around with the imagery and like to actually create something, when I was building my website, I was using a lot of AI generated images, and every time I create one that I liked, it was like I just felt such a jolt of excitement. Like I was like literally, it was like winning the lottery or something. And I couldn't sleep. All I wanted to do was create more and more. It was really crazy. Yeah.
Yes, I do understand. I have spent hours when Midjourney came out. I spent hours, on my phone, just if I had to be in a place for, and I would just image after image after. Yeah, I totally get it. Totally get it.
Yeah. And some are just so beautiful and so colorful. And yeah. And I think too, like that feeling like you can be this incredible artist, even though you're not really
Or singing. And I hope you've done the actual voice too. You can create your own song.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I think like UDIO, you can go in and tell it that you want the style of song you want, the musical kinds of instruments that you want played, and then give it just a few sentences about what you want, and it'll produce a song for you.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I've done that for my parents, like did a video on them and took their image, created other images from it, and then made a story and put it all to music.
Do that. And that's UDIO.
But now they can put sound effects in. Runway is another one where you just give it a prompt and it will create the video and the sound effects. There are capabilities out there that a few prompts, boom, here's your entire video with sound effects and voice. And you can put your voice in if you want.
So you can write a movie script, put it in there, and it'll just produce the whole thing right then.
Well, it'll do bits and pieces at a time. There are some capabilities where you could do it by frame, lay out the entire storyline, and with each of the storylines as you want, with more or less a vignette, and then stitch them all together pretty easily. So yes, if you ever decide you want to get into movie production, you could do your own movie over a weekend.
Back to ownership, and it sounds like you may have some familiarity with trademark and copyright laws. I was starting to do research, and I was doing it with ChatGPT and Perplexity, and I was asking it, was it really true that the majority of Americans voted for President Trump? Because yes, he won the majority, but does that mean that the majority of Americans gave him a mandate to do whatever he's doing? And so as it was giving me that data, I started to ask it to compare the findings with what ChatGPT was coming up with and what Perplexity was coming up with. And then I was asking it a series of questions and like, well, what about kids and babies that don't vote, and getting numbers on the entire population versus people who can't vote and all of that. So it came up with that. And then I said, well, write an article about how more or less representative the voting results were. And so it wrote this whole article. And then I said, well, how do I credit you? And it said, you don't have to credit me. You're the author of this. That didn't feel right. I mean, I did spend about an hour coming up with questions, questioning the data, cross-referencing it. So I deserve some credit, but I don't deserve all the credit of being the sole author. I was talking to ChatGPT and saying some publications would say that you should be credited. And then it said, okay, if you want to give me some credit, you can just put this one sentence in here. But it still doesn't feel right. What are your thoughts on it?
I'm like you. I would be very uncomfortable putting that out as my own. But it should give you references. It usually gives you that little numbers. Yeah, and then you have to go back through and understand, make sure that those are actual references, because of course we know that these large language models, they can make up references. So you have to go back and do that, restructure. It may help you get with the ideas and the outline, but yeah, that's where the hard work. And then, I wouldn't credit ChatGPT after you've done your due diligence and kind of rewrote it to fit what you really want. I mean,
oh, it does feel though, even with looking at all the references and then reorganizing things a bit, it's like it wouldn't be okay to just take what a person had written, and unless you're going to so much rewrite it. But even if you check the references of what they had, you're not going to keep their paragraphs or anything like that.
Right. Absolutely not.
Plagiarism. Yeah. So I guess that's the thing. It's like, it feels like plagiarism if they've constructed the article. But I think to say like we're co-authors of this, like on a research paper, sometimes, one writer is going to do more than the rest, but they all contributed. So I think something like that is okay. But yeah, it raises a lot of questions.
Sure.
There.
And I'm no expert on that. I mean, I know teachers and professors, they're dealing with that, right?
Yeah.
I'm married to one, so I
well, I think
not an AI fan.
I think it really depends on what you're trying to teach, right? Like if you're teaching a writing class, then they need to write, although it could be interesting to study how AI is writing articles and, what is AI doing that works or doesn't work, and study that. But when I was teaching at California Institute for Human Sciences, a remote viewing class, and my goal was to have the students every week go out and do a remote viewing experiment and then write it up. And they only had to do like one trial, but like have their husband like do a telepathy test with them, or a picture drawing test where they look at a page in a book and the other person's in the other room and they have to see if they can project that image. And then I wanted that to be written up as like a remote viewing experimental write-up. but that's a lot of work for the students to have to do every single week. And at first they all kind of freaked out about it, like, oh my gosh, this is way too much. But I said, no, actually, I don't mind if you go to AI and have it help you write it, because I'm not trying to really get your writing skills up beyond, I want you to learn like the format of an experimental write-up, the literature, the methods, the discussion. So I'd like you to turn in a paper that looks like that, so you get used to, the parts of the write-up and how that looks. But I don't need you to take the time to write a whole literature review. So just let AI write it for you and stick it in there. And then you have your, some extra references. So that worked out really well. And I felt, and it made it so that they could do all of this work each week. But then at the same time, I was having discussions with some other teachers, and they were like, we strictly forbid using AI in our classes whatsoever. I don't know.
It depends on your objective. And your objective was, hey, I want you to understand how to do research. Here's the scientific method. This is how you do an experiment. It's not so critical. So I didn't see any issue with what you did.
Yeah, it's tricky. One of the things I wanted to ask you about was your study and practice of shamanism. And could you share a little bit about that?
So remote viewing leads you on a path, doesn't it? You start to explore other modalities. And I've always found I really enjoy the Foundation for Shamanic Studies. They actually help indigenous communities with getting back some of these traditions. So they have a strong research background. And so I just started taking courses from them and found them pretty fascinating to explore how, centuries of cultures. I mean, they're all a little different, right? But shamanism has been around for centuries, maybe the oldest type of thing like that. It's not really a religion, right? It's more of some type of modality to do healing and things like that. So I've just found it fascinating in the way that it works with energies that exist and everything is alive, right? So a little bit of your psychometry types of things. Of course, they have divination and healing is a big thing. The fact that you really need to be compassionate and kind. With shamanism, you journey to understand things, right? You have a question, you on a personal journey. It's not meditation, though I keep comparing it to meditation, listening to drums or drumming yourself or rattling. And basically you take a journey to try to get an answer to whatever your question is. And some of the instructors there, they've written articles about how, and do it themselves, they map out their journeys, like on maybe on a drum or a paper or anything. So they have this map in their mind and on artifacts about these different upper, middle, and lower worlds. So I thought that would be, I'm like, how could you use AI to map out your world as you journey, right? When you journey on this question, this is where you go on that path, and then you do it another time and it's over here. And how would you do what the indigenous people have done? And some modern shamans. And I don't know if that would take the AI voice that we're talking about and part of the research that we're doing, because it's kind of hard to capture that. If you've ever done extended remote viewing and trying to capture after you come out of that is challenging, right?
Yeah, it is, because it's hard to remember it. There's so much that happened. You're kind of going in and out of the theta state or awakeness. But then if you're trying to write during it, then you're kind of taking yourself out of it.
Exactly.
But I have found talking into a tape recorder helps. So that would be cool, maybe to just dictate directly into AI, and then it could produce pictures of what you were talking about. It could produce
exactly. Yes, this is like where my dopamine goes. This is great. I could totally get into that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's such a great idea. In fact, I think I'm even going to try that this week with it and just do a session talking into AI, and then it could produce the drawings. It could write everything up. Like for an account, it could store the data. So then, yeah, it can start to compile, especially sometimes like we'll have similar targets over the years. Like I've even being task blind, I've been tasked the Statue of Liberty at least a few times and have different sessions. And each time it was like going after it from different angles and different things came up, and it would be really cool to just see what it had to say about that. You called it the Foundation for Shamanic. Is the research like comparing different cultures and times and practices?
Imagine, either they're white articles about their experiences there and what they've observed and the differences, like you said, the differences or similarities, or if a culture, has for other politics out of their control, because as in centuries past, shamans have been in competition with religious leaders and political leaders, right, for the public. So they have, for a long time, washed out those indigenous types of communities in order to gain control over the populations. So sometimes in the past, and probably in the present, gone out and helped these cultures. They do some really good work. I really would like to do some more of their courses.
Yeah, something to check out for sure. I found it really helpful at times just to normalize these topics, to think back to other cultures where this was just so much part of everyday life. And
right.
Different cultures of people would have it where everyone would wake up in the village and they'd come together and share their dreams. And they knew when someone was coming home after a month-long trip because they'd have a vision of them. And I think it does really help both normalize the topic and remind us how easy it is to tune in intuitively. It seems like these other cultures weren't making that big of a deal about it. It was just what you do all the time. And I think a lot of times it's where we think it's something so far away from us or unusual that it does make it harder to access because of that mindset. And I was going to ask you, yes, I know you are also a member of the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies.
I tell you, I wish I could spend more time on it. Organizations like that, again, it's exploring the phenomena. So fascinating how different the groups are, but just that they're all doing this investigation. I actually joined MUFON one point, and actually got trained as a MUFON investigator, Mutual UFO Network. Yeah. So I had this ambition for a little while to go out and do these I did go on a couple of investigations.
Did you actually?
Yes, I did.
I did the field investigator training too. Yeah. Yeah, but I never passed my test because it was asking questions about like radiation, and I needed to study a little bit more for those questions. So I have to admit I haven't yet passed my test, but you must have. And then
I did. I bought all this equipment.
Did you?
Go out. I did. I was like, oh yeah, I need a tape measure that can do 100 feet. Looking at all these meters. So when I found.
And what happened when you went out on the investigations? Were you with another field investigator?
Yeah. They did. Yes, I went with a field investigator. One of them was great. It was on a beach, and someone had seen a square in the sky. A square form in the sky. So I enjoyed doing that. I've done a couple myself in helicopters. I think they ended up being. So I liked that It was critical thinking, not just jumping to it's something, oh, wow. It's like, no, you got to rule out this. You really have to look at the flight paths. You have to look what was going on there, understand some of the different phenomena you might see. But so I do like it. I'd like to go that again. I think the Skywatcher effort is pretty interesting. I don't know that it would be fun to go out with those guys and see what it's like when they do investigations, because since they use various methods. But SDU does some great research, right? And I still have yet to make I'd like to make sometime in-person conference there.
Yeah, that would be fun. And so it's interesting because you're part of IRVA, which has as one of its aims is to do formal research or continue the research aspect, and then the shamanism and the UAP studies. So all of these organizations are research organizations, and so many people don't even realize these organizations exist. They're not aware of all the research that has been done in these topics for well over 100 years or so. And what do you see as a solution for that? Because you still hear people today say like, yeah, well, if this stuff was real, then why wouldn't there be any research done on it? And it's like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? But outside of these circles, we're the obsessed people, right? Like this is our lives. We live and breathe this every moment, but there's a lot of people that don't. So what do you think we can do? And will AI help with this in some ways?
Absolutely, I think so. So I definitely think that there's been a lot of progress. There's always a lot of noise, though, in the UAP. So just examining the phenomena, you look at in all aspects of the phenomena. I mean, look at what Rice University does, as the Archives of the Impossible. That is, what an amazing effort, right? To capture the experiences that John Mack studied, of the phenomena that Jacques Vallée studied, right? I'm sure there's many more people there, but I know you've been to one of their conferences at least, and I went to the last one. So it's movements like these that are really going to make a huge difference. And of course, having the DC area very interested in the UAPs, a lot of credible people coming forth, an organization stood up to study at a government organization that takes it seriously. I think all of these things help. Of course, nuts and bolts, because the remit is this, but you can't really deny that there's a phenomenal aspect to it.
That's a good point. Yeah, with what's happening in Washington, because we can now see, even with the disclosure and the Senate hearings and everything around UAPs, now there's some different podcasters like Ross Coulthart or Joe Rogan who are now interviewing remote viewers, and even remote viewing's becoming more of in topic. The only thing is I'm not necessarily seeing them like quoting the research studies, right? Like I even still hear people making statements like, oh, there's not much research going on. So that's a little bit of concern, but for that matter, we could say what's going on with the discussions around vaccines or other medical advances that are just the science aspect of it seems to be discarded for more of the experiential right now.
And our IRVA conference, like we talked, we're having Kelly Chase and J. Christopher King are going to come out to the IRVA conference in October. Jay has the Experiencer group, so a really safe community for people who have had anomalous experiences to discuss that amongst people who experiences. And then Kelly's had the UFO podcast. Anyway, now they're merging and they have the Cosmosis. And when they come out to the IRVA conference, they're going to be filming Cosmosis 2, because they see that intersection between remote viewing and UAP. So that's going to be really exciting to have them be able to do sidebar interviews with remote viewing experts and explore their knowledge base of understanding the experiencers and experience of communities and UAPs with remote viewing.
That is a really good point. And there's so many more documentaries and books, and AI is going to help with producing more and more media.
Right.
That helps people to learn about these topics.
The AI is going to help in terms of the research, the scientific research, and testing new hypotheses, proposing some or coming up with solutions. The more we could feed in both types of data, perhaps, with the Archives of the Impossible, when that opens up and people are able to get the data that has a lot of respect for privacy of the sources, right? Who knows what kind of patterns we're going to find and then how those cross over to areas of scientific study. And we haven't touched on religion, of course, which is another thing that the Rice University focuses on, that intersection with religion and the UAP phenomena.
There's oftentimes such a divide between religion and these other topics. There's so many similar aspects to, you're sitting there, you're praying to something you can't see, whether Jesus, whoever it is, it's an unseen force that's giving you an intervention in your life. And how is that any different than what anyone else is doing as far as spirit communication or intuitive communication? God isn't usually like speaking with his mouth. So there's some interaction happening. And if we could just take away all these labels and walls and just come together and say, let's not discard what's happening in the metaphysical arena or New Age arena or spiritualist, but let's also not discard what's happening in Catholicism, Judaism, anywhere else. There's so much that we could learn. I mean, why is there hundreds of millions of people that are part of the Catholic religion? They must be getting something out of it. And it's not just we like to be with other like-minded people. There's something happening in every one of these religions that are enhancing people's lives and that are making them feel like it's worth their time to be involved. And so we should be studying that as parapsychology researchers, as anyone interested in these topics. We're missing so much by just saying, those religions, they don't like these topics, and we're just going to ignore them like they're trying to ignore what we might have to offer.
You can't have this conversation, of course, without mentioning Diana Pasulka's American Cosmic book, right? Which is the crossover, because she was a Catholic religious scholar and started to see those patterns with the UAP phenomena. And now she's written several on the UAPs.
Would you suggest that people start with her first book?
Definitely American Cosmic. Because at that point, she was a little bit more skeptical about the phenomena. She really approached it as a religious scholar looking at a phenomena and with that kind of objectiveness. And I think her path is a good one to follow, and to see how someone with her background who studied Catholic mysticism has seen similar patterns, because she's really quite good.
Is there anything else you could tell us that you learned or got out of going to the Archives of the Impossible conference recently?
It was just really just to see so many people interested in and taking seriously the human experience of anomalous phenomena, right? And another thing that I really took out of that was how connected the written word can be to the phenomena. If that makes sense to you, there's a relationship between books, written language, and the phenomena. I had given my sister a copy of American Cosmic. She's not into paranormal stuff at all, right? She's just retired, and she was just playing with her dogs, reading it, and she opened the book, and the letters became like almost on fire, and the book seemed to come alive. And she's like, what is that? What is, and it was symbols that she didn't recognize. She didn't even tell me for a couple of weeks. She's like, I don't know. And I had just taken the MUFON training site. So I was like, okay, we got to document all of this about what happened. And for a couple of years, I had been like, what was that? What was that? Well, it just so happens I saw Diana Pasulka at the Archives of the Impossible conference. And I asked her, I said, I'm sure you get lots of questions. And she said, yeah, that's actually a phenomenon that's happened in the past, documented in religious studies and books on things that have happened. So she's come across that type of phenomena. She's like, I bet your sister didn't know that, did you? I said, oh, neither of us, I did. We just thought it was just really weird. So that really drilled into me because I'd asked Jeffrey Kripal about it too, that there is this relationship.
The energy can actually come through the book. And that is so interesting because maybe there's a lot of different, like healing can come through the book. And it might be easy to just pass it off as like, oh, it's giving me a new idea, striking a chord. So then there's a change in me. But what if it's actually bringing through an energy, a vibration or frequency or spirits or something like that, or just like the author's intent? I know I've had so many people write to me about my books where they say that they were walking through the bookstore and my book in some cases literally flew off the shelf and hit them. I've been meaning to go back through my email since my first one came out in 2004 because I've had at least a dozen people tell me this. And I'm like, do all authors have people tell them this?
Anna told me that she's had people tell her that.
Really?
About her books. That they moved or, yeah. So that's interesting. Well, now you have AI to go back through all your mails.
I've had Yahoo for 20 years. Is there a way for it to search Yahoo?
Yeah, I have a Yahoo mail too, but yeah, I can get with you later about how we might do that.
Wow.
If not, there's external programs you can get that'll search and sort your mail.
That's really cool. Well, you are such a wealth of knowledge, and I know we could go on talking for many more hours, but I know it's late on the East Coast.
It is. Yeah.
Now, and
thank you, though.
Need to get
Thank you for the opportunity. You're a good interviewer.
This has been really fun. And yeah, we'll have to do it again in the future. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here, and we'll talk to you soon.
For early access to our videos and live stream events, sign up for our free weekly newsletter at newthinkingaloud.org. New Thinking Aloud is presented by the California Institute for Human Science, a fully accredited university offering distant learning graduate degrees that focus on mind, body, and spirit. The topics that we cover here. We are particularly excited to announce new degrees emphasizing parapsychology and the paranormal. Visit their website at cihs.edu.
Book 4 in the New Thinking Aloud dialogue series is Charles T. Tart, 70 Years of Exploring Consciousness and Parapsychology, now available on Amazon.
You can now download all 8 copies of the New Thinking Aloud magazine for free, or order beautiful printed copies. Go to newthinkingaloud.org.